Hey everyone, I decided that since this is a newer channel, I'm going to just go ahead and show you what I have on my shelves at the moment of my comics collection. Now, keep in mind, this shelf doesn't have enough room on it, so some of my books are stored in a closet or just in storage somewhere, so this is what I have displayed right now. Let's get right into it. Okay guys, so I had to switch to my phone so I can show you my collection more easily, just so I can pull out some books. So over here, you can see some novels. They have nothing to do with comic books, but I still enjoyed reading them, especially this one right here, A Brief History of 7 Killings. It's about the assassination attempt on Bob Marley's life. So if you like music, Quentin Tarantino movies, this is a really great book by a talented writer. Marlon James is fantastic, and he's going to be writing a Game of Thrones style African mythology book series pretty soon, so I'm really excited to check that out. So over here I have the first 11 or so issues of the Ta-Nehisi Coates Black Panther run. Regardless of what you think of his writing style, I've been enjoying these comics a lot, and I think more people should check them out. Over here are the first, second, and fourth volumes of the Thor Epic Collection by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They haven't released the third one yet. That's coming out later this year, but it's a very interesting run, especially if you like Fantastic Four or the cosmic type stories. They fall more into that area later in the run, like in the fourth volume. You have Thor fighting Galactus. He meets Adam Warlock. There's this entire arc where Galactus fights Ego, the living planet, and then Thor has to track down Galactus so he can prevent him from threatening the galaxy. It's a very interesting book, so I highly recommend all three of these. It takes a while for them to get into the swing of things, but once they start, it's fantastic. Yet again, I highly recommend these books. I highly recommend any of the Epic collections, which you'll see more of later on. Over here, you see the Superior Foes of Spider-Man book. I love this run so much. It's by Nick Spencer and Steve Lieber. Regardless of what you think of Nick Spencer's Captain America run, because that's very controversial right now, this book is fantastic. It's funny, it really understands the characters, and it's great for hardcore fans and new readers alike. It only ran 17 issues, but it might be better that way, because at least it had an ending, it wrapped up the story very well, and it's a very concise and coherent story. I highly recommend it. I think it's the same price as a normal omnibus. $49. So it's pretty cheap, especially if you buy it online. I'll probably do a review of this one later on. So, Punisher Max by Garth Ennis, the first volume. Again, Punisher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Steve Dillon is one of my favorite comic book artists of all time, and this story does not disappoint. Welcome Back, Frank is a very interesting story. Again, highly recommend it. I'm sensing a theme here. I'm going to recommend a lot of books that I'm going to be showing you. Punisher Max by Jason Aaron and Steve Dillon again. Very great run. This has one of my favorite iterations of Bullseye ever. It's a very small omnibus, but it's a fantastic story. It does the character justice. If you like anything about the Punisher, if you like Punisher Max by Garth Ennis, you're definitely gonna love this run. Jason Aaron's a great writer, and I'm really happy to own this book. Moon Knight by Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey, Civil War, the hardcover. I had the single issues and the trade paperback, but that was so dog-eared I had to sell it, and when the movie came out, they really capitalized on the opportunity by releasing these hardcover volumes. So I feel kind of ripped off, but it still looks really great on a shelf. The next one here is the Iron Fist Epic Collection. I really love Iron Fist as a character. Yes, the TV show was not as great as many people expected, but these are really great classic stories. I grew up with the character. He was one of my earliest favorites, and this collection doesn't disappoint. It's very of its time. It's extremely cheesy, but it has a lot of awesome, high-energy, badass moments once you get into it. Over here, and it's hiding. Okay, so right here I have the Incredible Hulk Masterworks. It collects the first 6 issues of the original Hulk run before it was canceled. It has artists like Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko does one issue. Over here, another Jason Aaron book, his Incredible Hulk. It's okay. I'm not crazy about this run. We're starting to get into the cosmic stuff. Doctor Strange, The Oath by Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin, I believe. Great book. The movie took a lot of, not a lot, but it took some inspiration from this book. Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, Triumph and Torment. Highly recommend this book. Doctor Doom is my favorite comic book villain of all time. One of my favorite comic book characters of all time. And this book has one of the best creative teams in comics. It's Roger Stern and Mike Mignola, who created Hellboy, and it is everything that you would expect from these characters and these creators. Essentially, the story is Doctor Doom going to hell to save his mother, but he has to get Doctor Strange's help in order to get down there. I'm not going to go in depth with every book on the shelf because that's going to take a while. I'm just going to breeze through a few of them. This is a very underrated story, Marvel 1602 by Neil Gaiman. It takes place in colonial America. No, it takes place in England as they're trying to colonize the Americas. It's very interesting. I highly recommend it if you like Neil Gaiman, history, the Silver Age especially, because a lot of the characters from that time period are in here. Okay, next one, Doctor Strange Masterworks Volume 2. I have the Omnibus that came out. Many people think it's a ripoff. I like it. It collects the entire Steve Ditko run. I've currently lent that to a friend, and he's checking it out right now, but once I get it back, I'll probably do a video. This collects the stories after. It collects the end of Ditko's run, and then the issues right after that. So here, Captain Marvel, I was pleasantly surprised by this. I went on a Jim Starlin binge for a while, and I really didn't expect anything out of this, but I was extremely surprised. It got me interested into the character of Captain Marvel, not Carol Danvers, but the original one. I dropped something. And it's a very interesting story. This collects Jim Starlin's entire run, as well as the death of Captain Marvel, the graphic novel. Warlock by Jim Starlin. This is the most recent comic I've read. I was blown away by this. This is the most philosophic, psychedelic comic book I've ever read. I highly recommend it to anyone, especially if you're not into comics, because while it takes place only in the cosmic area of the Marvel Universe, it goes through a lot of moral themes. It's extremely complex. I don't think Jim Starlin gets enough credit for his work. Most people know him for this guy right here, who appears in this book, but this is a fantastic, eye-opening comic series. Again, highly recommend it. I should probably start a counter for every time I say that. Infinity Gauntlet, everyone owns this. Not going to get into it. X-Men Masterworks Volume 1 by Jack and Stan collects the first 10 issues. Days of Future Past, God Loves, Man Kills. This is probably my favorite... Get out of the way, Thanos. This is my favorite X-Men story ever. It's more relevant now than ever, definitely. If you haven't read it, pick it up. If you have read it before, read it again. Chris Claremont and... the artist's last name is Anderson. I don't remember his first name. Wolverine, we have right here. Up there is The Sellout by Paul Beatty. Great book. Check it out. Very controversial. Has nothing to do with comics again, but it's a very eye-opening book, and everyone should check it out. I can't make you, but it's a very great book. It's well written. You're going to laugh out loud. So let's keep going. This is one of the earliest graphic novels I owned in my collection. It's just a random series of Iron Man comics. Not a must-own, but it was one of the first books that I got. Right after this, Captain America Winter Soldier by Brubaker. The guy's a genius. He knows how to write Cap. This is probably my favorite version of the character. After that, some Ultimate Spider-Man. Great run for people who want to get into comics. Oh, excuse me. I've been under the weather recently. The 100+ issues that Bendis and Bagley did on this run are stellar. I lend out a lot of my books. I have the Omnibus that came out a couple of years ago. I bought it used, so it's in questionable condition. But I highly recommend that people check it out. I have a good chunk of Spider-Man here. The Masterworks, it's volumes 1, 2, 5, and 7. So I think the first 4 volumes of the Masterworks, you can get them in these paperbacks. This one's kind of dog-eared. I've had this one for a while. But you can find the first 4 volumes of the Masterworks, or you can get the first 2 volumes of the Epic Collection, and that collects the entire Steve Ditko run. And book 5 is the start of John Romita Sr.'s run. And the thing about John Romita that people don't appreciate, yes, he had to follow Steve Ditko, but the way he drew Peter Parker became the status quo for the character for the next couple of decades, and I really like his art style, especially, although it doesn't look at all like Ditko's. So, Death of Gwen Stacy, great story, very important in the Spider-Man mythos. Ant-Man, Giant Man Masterworks, The Avengers, Submariner, he's one of my favorite characters. He's very underrated. He is probably one of the best characters that Stan Lee wrote in the Silver Age, because he had his own voice. Sometimes people say that Stan Lee's a bit too wordy, but he always knew how to write characters like The Thing, Submariner, Doctor Doom. It's always exciting to see him write any of those characters. And then here's John Byrne's Namor. Anything John Byrne does is good. So, The New Frontier story by the legendary Darwin Cook. Fantastic. It's sad that Darwin Cook is not with us anymore, but he's left a great body of work behind for all of us to go back and read. Cosmic Odyssey is a story I didn't know existed until very recently, and I'm so disappointed about that. But I'm happy that I picked this up. This hardcover came out recently. It's Jim Starlin and Mike Mignola, so a dream team of comics creators. Essentially, it's about Darkseid going to recruit people, the new gods of New Genesis, and the Justice League to help him fight off death, which, as Darkseid fans know is what he's mainly fixated with. Mike Mignola's art is fantastic, and Jim Starlin writes a killer Darkseid. DC Invasion, yes, I jumped on the bandwagon because of those TV shows. Jack Kirby Omnibus, I love Jack. I hate how they're milking all of this profit out of him. This is an okay collection. If you're trying to just find a Jack Kirby Justice League story, you're going to be disappointed because he only draws the last couple of issues and he plots them, so he's not actually part of the creative process. They kind of put him in the background, but he's still credited. The first half of the book is a bunch of random stories. You have these Twilight Zone-like horror stories at the beginning. You have some Sandman. It's an okay collection. It's not a must-have, but if you're a Jack Kirby fan, you can check it out. Superman, Last Son of Krypton. Very underrated story. I like it. Whether you like Jeff Johns or not, it depends on you, but he co-wrote it with Dick Donner, who directed the first Superman movie and parts of the second one. New 52, Action Comics, Wonder Woman, the first volume of the archives there. This was very difficult for me to get into. It's very of the time and very thematic based on the creator's style. It has a lot of bondage, and it's very of the time and steeped in the creator's own vision. I think Wonder Woman's image has changed a lot since then, for better or worse. There have been really great depictions of her and some iffy ones. Justice League, Trinity War, I don't know why I still have this. It was a very anticlimactic build-up to another arc. Let's move on to the second shelf. Okay, I'm going to move this book again. And there's Aquaman right there. Aquaman is my favorite DC character. I don't care what people think about him. He is amazing. He is the baddest of the asses. I reviewed these two books on this channel already, so I'm not going to get into these. You can check out those videos. And let's just start from here. I'm going to move this flag. Okay. Wonder Woman by George Perez. This is just a masterpiece by one of the greatest comic creators of all time. This is more of a coming-of-age story for Wonder Woman. There are a lot of philosophic and moral themes in here. The art is fantastic, as you can imagine. George Perez writes a few issues, but most of them are plotted by him and written out by Len Wein. This is an interesting depiction of Wonder Woman. H.o.A, probably one of the best DC titles that they've released in the past decade or so. When did this come out? Late 90s, early 2000s, I think. Still a great run. The first fourth of this starts with David Goyer writing, and then Jeff Johns takes over. I highly recommend this. There are two more that are just as big as this book. This is about 1,200 pages. I think the next one, the second volume, is about 1,300 to 1,500, so it's going to be very unwieldy. It's going to be hard to read this on your lap. You're going to have to put it on a desk and read it. Flash Omnibus, Volume 1. Okay, I'm going to make it known that DC's Silver Age and Golden Age stories are very hit and miss. I just can't get through some of their stories, especially Justice League. They're so bland and uninteresting to me. Take that as you will, but The Flash is probably my favorite title from that time period. It's the most Silver Age-esque book of the time. There's a lot of science involved. The show actually takes a lot of inspiration from this. There are a lot of moments that they took panel by panel from that for the show. I was very happy with this run. I don't know if I'm gonna get the second one yet, but I'll have to think about it. I might do a review of this book soon. Daredevil by Frank Miller. great run. This does not collect Born Again and Man Without Fear, but it collects his original run on Daredevil. This is the first edition. It was reprinted recently. Highly recommend this. There's a companion omnibus with Man Without Fear and Born Again, so you can check that out. I think it's about the same price as a normal omnibus. Here is the Daredevil. I have a good chunk of Daredevil here. These are the single issues for the last Mark Waid, Chris Samnee Daredevil run. Daredevil's always been a character that I was fascinated with. I don't care if he's colorful and silly like the Silver Age in this run, or dark and gritty like the Frank Miller Brubaker run, and also Bendis. I started the Brubaker Omnibus very recently, and that's also, there's a review of that on my channel, so you should check that out. These are great books, good books to get people who've never read comics into. These are all the single issues. All of these are collected in omnibus format, so you can check those out. They're probably cheaper than the single issues. Fantastic Four. I love Fantastic Four more than anyone. I'm so disappointed that they can't get them right in a movie. They've had 4 attempts already. So sad that they haven't even gotten 1 hit. Now, the Fantastic Four are the building blocks of the Marvel Universe. Pretty much everything that you are familiar with from Marvel came out of this. Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, Galactus, Silver Surfer, Black Panther, the Kree, the Skrull. So much came out of the Jack and Stan run alone, which I have all of that here. I have the entire run collected in different formats. I have the first 30 or so issues in Masterworks and Epic Collection, in the Epic Collection formats. The 2 omnibus formats that came out, the third one came out very recently. The third one collects up until the last... There are 7 issues left of the Jack and Stan run after this book. 7 or so, I'm not sure if that's the right number, but you can find all of those in the 10th volume of the Fantastic Four Masterworks. You can get this for a very cheap price. I got this for about $10 or $12 just because I wanted to finish off the run. Here is the Mark Waid Fantastic Four run. I don't have the 1st and 4th volumes. I should probably get those soon. Right next to this, I have Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. There are only 2 volumes of his run, and they're pretty much out of print. It took me a while to get this, and even when I found it, it was at a very, it was kind of steep price for me, but I had to wait a long time for it to become reasonable. If I find the 1st volume at a good price, I'm definitely going to check it out, because I can never have enough Fantastic Four in my life. Except those movies. Those movies are trash and should be wiped from people's memories. Aquaman, like I said, I love this character. I love what Jeff Johns did with him. If you want to get into Aquaman, check out JLA by Grant Morrison. Blackest Night is very interesting. They do great things with the Aquaman, and then the Jeff Johns run. Okay, so on to Batman. Here are the Chronicles. This collects the first couple of Batman appearances, all from his very first appearance in Detective Comics up until Batman #1. Again, very of their time. Batman kills people. He uses guns. At one point, he is swinging off of a building and he kicks a guy's neck and snaps it. And then there's one story with Hugo Strange where he hangs this giant from the Batplane and says, and this is a quote, "He's probably better off this way." So very early Batman. He hasn't really gotten into his no-killing phase yet. Batman Year One. Everyone has Batman Year One. Batman: The Long Halloween. If you don't have Batman Year One, or if you're trying to get into comics or into Batman, definitely check out this story or another story that I have. It's somewhere over here. Earth One. This does a more realistic. None of these characters are real. They can't exist in the real world, but it shows you a more humble version of Batman. He's very flawed. He makes too many mistakes. The first page of Earth 1 is him chasing a crook, jumping over, trying to hop the gap between two buildings, and he falls down, and the first thing he says is, ouch. Death in the Family, great run. This book also collects Lonely Place of Dying, first Tim Drake story. Nightfall, Dark Knight Returns, enough said. Mad Love, very good book. Death of the Family. Anything that Scott Snyder does is fantastic. His entire Batman run is good, but this is probably my favorite arc in his entire run. I have this run in single issues, but I can't display those, so they're in a box somewhere. Joker by Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo. Dark Knight by Paul Dini. This is probably my favorite Batman story to come out recently. It's a true story, although Paul Dini uses Batman characters to show you how he coped with his recovery after being mugged. The Killing Joke. I don't like this as much as most people. It's very important in Batman's history, but it's just not that big of a deal for me. So Batman Earth 1, volumes 1 and 2. The Earth 1 books are very hit and miss in quality, but the Batman ones have been fantastic so far. I can't wait for the third one. Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison. All-Star Superman. Superman Birthright. My favorite Superman story is either Last Son of Krypton or For All Seasons. I love Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. They're the perfect team. A modern Lee and Kirby. Everything they do it's just gold. I recommend that you buy anything from that team. Alright, let's go to the last shelf. I have these Game of Thrones books here. Legends. I bought this because I really like John Byrne and John Ostrander. Ostrander did Suicide Squad, and John Byrne is a legend. This is a Darkseid story. It's pretty interesting. I mainly got it because of the creative team, and also it's the first appearance of the new Suicide Squad, the modern one. Birds of Prey, volumes 1 through 3. I did not expect that I would enjoy this book that much, but it's very of its time. It's a very 90s, but it's a really great story. I can't wait for the next volume. It really got me into the Birds of Prey as a whole. I can't believe they're going to be doing a movie. I'm looking forward to that. Preacher. Fantastic run. It's not for everyone. It'll make you very uncomfortable. But there wasn't really anything in it that prevented me from finishing it. I loved it from start to finish. I bought all of these in one day and binged them over a short period of time. I couldn't put them down. Definitely buy these. It's not Marvel or DC, but Vertigo's books are always high quality. You'll never be disappointed. One of my favorite titles going now is Southern Bastards by Jason Aaron and Jason Latour. These two can do no wrong. I have these both in single issues, and I'm going to be collecting the volumes as they print those. Okay, Hellblazer. I have the first 2 volumes of that. Hellblazer, John Constantine was created by Alan Moore and Jamie Delano did the first chunk of the run. Garth Ennis did a good run with this character too. First volume of Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. I'm probably going to get into that later. I'm going to buy the rest of it, but I really enjoyed this first volume. V for Vendetta, Watchmen, yet again, everyone has this. DC Universe by Alan Moore. Not a required read, but it has some interesting stories, like Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow for the Man Who Has Everything. A good number of Superman stories. I bought this used. It's a Booster Gold book. I like Booster Gold. He's a very interesting character, and I'm excited they're printing the Justice League International Omnibus. That's a great run. This book is kind of like a modern Justice League International book. It has Booster Gold going back in time to before Ted Kord dies. Ted Kord is the Blue Beetle. This isn't recommended reading, but I really like Booster Gold stories, so that was really entertaining. Justice League Origin, New 52, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. Also, legendary creative team. This is the run where Green Arrow learns that Speedy has been using heroin. The Green Lantern Chronicles is the first couple of issues of Green Lantern of the Silver Age. I was kind of disappointed. Green Lantern's actually kind of a lame character during that time period. Green Arrow by Andy Diggle and Jock. Very interesting story. The first season of the show kind of takes inspiration from this book, but I like what Diggle did with the character. This is a good start for people who want to get into Green Arrow. It's a pretty short book too. It's about 5 to 6 issues, I believe. Walking Dead Compendium, Volume 3, the start of the Negan run saga. Brian K. Vaughan can do no wrong. Everything that Brian K. Vaughan is fantastic. He's probably one of the most talented comic book writers right now. People who love comics or people who've never read them before are definitely going to love his books. All of his dialogue is fantastic. It's always snappy. You're not going to have any trouble understanding what he's saying. There's a lot of heart and humor to his books, and he always finds a way to keep the story interesting. Again, Scott Snyder and Jock with Witches, Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey with Injection, The Fix, again by the Superior Foes of Spider-Man team, Nick Spencer and Steve Lieber. Whether you think that Nick Spencer is a terrible person because of the Captain America run, he still does a fantastic job with this book. I highly recommend it. If you want to buy it in stores, it's about $10. If you want to find it online, it's significantly cheaper. And then I have the entire run of Y the Last Man, all of the 5 volumes. Again, Brian K. Vaughan. This book, I can't say enough good things about this book. I probably don't have to, because most people know how fantastic it is. So, this is all that I have displayed right now. I have a couple of books hiding over there that I'll show you in a second. Now I had to cut over here because I have the first 2 volumes of the Hellboy library editions by Mike Mignola. I ordered the 3rd one recently, so that's coming. I'll probably do a review on these 2 someday in the future. So this is all that I have displayed right now. I have some stuff just sitting in a closet, but I'll just do an update video when I have more room on my shelves. And if you like this video, follow us on Twitter @AwesomeHeralds, and thanks for watching.